Hi, everyone, and welcome to Taiwan Fishing the Midwest's podcast series sponsored by Strike King Lure Company, Lou's Fishing, and Hannay's Marine. I'm Mike Frisch, the host of Fishing the Midwest Television, also the host of the Taiwan podcast series. We are in week 3 of the series, and tonight we're privileged to have a very special guest. Wally Marshall, Mr. Crappie, will be with us. After that, we'll talk to Pete from Omnia Fishing, and then we'll have Tom Ferdinandt with us from Hannay's Marine. And Tom's going to give us some tips for buying a used boat, and Pete's going to tell us a little bit about fishing in the Minneapolis area and what's going on at Omnia. So we've got 3 really good guests tonight, and as I said, we're going to start with Wally Marshall. We're very privileged to have Wally Marshall, Mr. Crappie, join us. Wally, welcome to the Taiwan podcast series.
Hey, man, thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast. I think it's a great deal to be asked to be on your show.
Well, we appreciate that, Wally, and we always appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. So, Wally, I'm going to ask you in a bit some tips on post-spawn crappies. But before we get to that, what's new in the Mr. Crappie world?
Well, Mr. Crappie's doing a lot of things. Last year I signed on with Spike It, and we're going to be coming with a lot of new products with the Spike It company under the Mr. Crappie branded items. A lot of good crappie colors, some new scents, etc., and that will be launched at ICAST. Also, 10 months ago, I signed with Gamakatsu, and I'm designing a whole new line of crappie hooks for today's crappie market.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And with Lou's and Strike King, we've got a whole new lineup of Mr. Crappie rods that's going to come out at ICAST. We've got a whole new lineup of lures with Strike King Lure Company that are custom made, hand tied, live scoping. I'm talking about flipping, dipping, skipping. You can do it all with these new baits that we have coming to the market, and it will all be launched at ICAST and also with the Smith Company, the Smith Consumer Products. We've got 5 new items that we'll be launching at the ICAST show themselves, because Smith's been in business over 100 years. Actually has knives, and of course they were built on sharpeners, but we're going to be introducing some new products there with Smith's. And I'll tell you what, it just goes on and on and on and on. It's just, hey, the Mr. Crappie brand is doing good, and we've been working hard at bringing what crappie anglers need out there in the marketplace.
Absolutely. And from what I can tell, post-pandemic as well, it seems like there's more and more people crappie fishing up here in the Midwest. It's always been a popular fish, and it just continues to grow in popularity. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Well, crappie fishing, that's where the growth is right now in the marketplace. I know that a lot of people bass fish, in tournaments, a lot of tournaments going on, etc. But, right now, the way it is now, and I've seen these turns and turn downs because of all the gas prices that's going on, and people are trying to get by. And I was in Walmart the other day, and there was a gentleman looking at some of my lures, and he had a couple of bags picked out, and I kind of helped him with a couple more. And he was saying, you know what, said, me and my wife, we live down here on Cedar Creek Lake, and hey, we're going to go catch some crappie because we got to get something to eat. We can't afford to go to the grocery store and pay the high prices for fish, and so we're going to start catching our own. You're going to see a lot of people turn to fishing during these tough times of trying to put food on the table.
Well, and the other thing too, Wally, with that is crappies are a fish that are, at least for a good part of our spring and early summer in the Midwest, and in some lakes all year, accessible from shore. So you don't need a boat and motor at times to catch them, and catch them in good numbers. And like you said, they're delicious table fare as well.
Yeah, like in the springtime around here, in most places where crappie come in to spawn, depending on how the clarity of the water of actually how shallow they go, and even on clear lakes, people will actually fish at nighttime off the bank with lanterns, etc., and do really good going after the crappie during the spawn. And hey, when I won my first tournament, I didn't even own a boat. I had a pair of waders and a fly rod and a popsicle stick for a reel, and only had one color jig. It was a blue
Right.
and white jig. That's all I could use, and a sack of jigs from Betts Tackle Company, and it was quite the feat. There was over 300 teams in the tournament, and me and my partner Joel Peacock won that tournament wade fishing in the cattails.
Wow. Wow. That's an awesome story. That's great. So, Wally, you referenced the spawn, and right now in the Midwest, our crappies, we've had kind of a delayed spring, and I believe there might still be some crappies that are, shallow in the spawn, but we're real soon going to start to see those crappies slide out deeper and get on those grass lines, as you call them. We call them weed lines up here, but um, talk to us a little bit. Give us some thoughts on what we should do in terms of best ways for us to catch those fish.
Well, right now, of course, I've been fishing for the last 7 days, and I'm tending to see a lot of crappie still in that 8 foot to 12 foot range. Not really set up on a real heavy summer pattern because our temperatures are still in the high 80s, low 90s. And then when it reaches up a little bit higher, you're going to start seeing thermoclines set up in the lakes. And these crappie will be, a lot of times that thermocline runs anywhere from 15 to 20 foot. And depending on the clarity of the water, of what that would be, if at all. And for the last 7 days, I've been catching crappie from 5 to 12 foot deep around some type of structure, and some that are suspended out over open water, especially early in the morning when they're chasing bait. And I'm fortunate enough to have Mega Live on my boat, and so I can actually look at these fish that are suspended out there chasing schools of shad, etc., early. And then when that sun pops up, they'll suck back into that structure. And so you have to kind of stay on the move. And on these post spawn crappie, you can pick up a couple here, move to the next structure, pick up a couple there. And sometimes there'll be 10 or 15 of them, but a lot of them will be smaller fish, but catching the larger fish. And especially here in Texas, in the last 7 days, I've probably caught over, I don't know, 15 fish around the 2 pound mark. And
Wow.
after a spawn, that's some pretty nice crappies. And you'll be seeing a lot of that out there on the YouTube, and also on a lot of Lose and Strike King videos that they're going to be putting together in the next few weeks, that'll be available for the new products that's going to be introduced at ICAST. I'm really excited about the whole new lineup of the Mr. Crappie rods and reels and the combos. Hey man, you talking about some, I got some reels, man. You can cast a country mile with them. And but going back to this post spawn, is I like to use a little bit longer rod, like an 8 foot or 9 foot rod with a spinning reel on it, because when I target those fish, I want to get on them quick before they spook, or because with boat slap, or you get the trolling motor going, and with that live scoping, those fish get kind of spooky. But I've been fishing some pretty stained water and really hadn't had that issue. And another thing, these fish has moved in on these boat docks, especially because boat docks are the number one structure for, or shade is the number one structure for all game fish. And so I've been shooting some docks also. with our new spinning rods and reels from Lou's, and we whacked them the other day, especially on some of my new lures that we'll have coming out here shortly. I wish I could tell you more about them in detail, but I
Yep.
want to keep it a surprise because, man, I'm just so excited because uh, I'll tell you this, they're going to have premium hooks in them.
Awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I had mentioned that Gamakatsu deal. I guarantee it, we're going to have some awesome, awesome uh, hooks out there. I mean, jigs, yeah.
Awesome. So, Wally, our fish here are going to slide out on those deep weed lines. Sometimes they slide out and suspend, move up on the weed lines when they want to feed, that kind of stuff. When we get into post spawn in that summer period, and you fished up here with us a couple years ago, so you saw the kind of conditions. Give us your thoughts on the best ways for us to catch those fish.
Well, just like I said, you gotta go on that structure, whether it's weed lines that's under the water that's just coming up, in those kind of grass beds, or the ones that's already grown all the way to the top and laying over. Those fish like to get in those pockets, depending on the clarity of the waters, how close you can get to them. But most of the fish there is casting. You gotta have to cast early morning, late evening will be the best times because when they bury up in that structure, it's kind of tough to get in there to get them in those grass beds unless you're using a really long pole. I would like to come up there and take my 14-foot rods and reach over in those pockets in them grass beds and run that jig down there. I think it would be very successful of maybe catching a good limit of crappie up there in Minnesota.
Sure, sure. What kind of baits?
Well, I would tend to go with a smaller. I would size down using a Shadpole or maybe one of my new baits like a hair jig. You finally got it out of me. Oh yeah.
All right.
So it's I would size down a little bit because crappie in the summertime here get a little finicky. These fish I've noticed this past week would chase a bait and just almost follow it all the way up to the surface and then just peel off of it. But I guarantee it, when you size down a little bit, you don't have that issue. But in the
Sure.
summertime, they really like meat. They like to go for minnows and stuff like that. Of course, I don't fish with minnows, but I do have a line of crappie hooks that will be coming out this summer. That's going to be really exciting with the Gamakatsu company.
Good.
Just remember the name Stiletto.
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 Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I'm going to
just
be at
remember that
ICAST.
name.
All right, I'm going
You'll
to be
see
at
it at
ICAST.
iCast.
All right, I can't
I
wait.
won't be wearing stilettos, no.
I was just going to say, Wally Marshall wearing stilettos.
Oh Lord, couldn't you imagine? Yeah. So, but no, I'll tell you, it's I'm excited about our new combos and our casting reels too. Lou's and Mr. Crappie. Mr. Crappie lineup is going to be totally awesome. We've got rods coming out from 4'6" all the way to 16 foot in length,
Wow.
and it's going to be really special.
So any crappie technique that you fish, you're going to have a rod and reel for.
Any technique, if you want to troll, flip, dip, skip, cast, any of it, trolling, long line trolling crankbaits, any of that, we will have the rod for any technique that you can use in the crappie market.
Cool. That's so cool. Well, I look forward to seeing those at ICAST, Wally. And okay, so let's go. Let's talk about that shad pole. And we used that bait as a cast and retrieve bait when you were up. And since you were up a couple years ago, I've spent a lot of time with that bait. And the more time I spend with it, the more I like it because it flat out catches them. And we'll get a shot of a shadpole up here so our viewers know what it looks like. But talk through, if you would, color selection based on water clarity and what your preferences are there.
Well, on the clarity up there, I like more of my natural colors, like a shad-like color in that clear water. I like some blues. I like some grays and stuff like that. More shiner colors that
Mm-hmm.
resemble a bait fish. And late evening, early morning, you can get away with using your black and chartreuse or your June bug colors that are a little bit darker because it's darker that time of day and the water is darker and you can get away with doing that. But when it gets on up in the day, I like to use more of a natural color in clear water. Now, if you get some murky stained water, I've been using a new color that I came out with last year. It's called the Houdat. It's a purple with chartreuse glitter in it with a really vibrant chartreuse tail. And I've been using the Joker, and I can send you guys a picture or two that you could post up out there, and I guarantee it would be the real deal.
That'd be
Some
awesome.
biggins. Some
Okay,
biggins. After the spawn, biggins.
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we've talked color. Let's talk about how you fished shadpole. Walk us through that.
Well, that's probably one of my number one dock shooting baits. I like to shoot that bait because it skips good. And also, the bait resembles like a tadpole, but it has the swimming action of a thread fin shad and has a squiggling tail like a tadpole. And it has a lot of action on there. And if you lose that ball off the tail, it really affects that bait to where it doesn't have much action at all because bait fish really don't have a lot of action. They just dart because it does have a darting action on it when you jerk it or pump it or put the Wally wiggle on it, And I'm telling you, I rig it on a 16th ounce jig head. I don't ever
Okay.
fish it on or a 32nd because I like that slower fall. I don't ever use it on an eighth ounce unless I don't know if I came up there and I needed to make some long casts. But if you put an eighth ounce on there, you got to move it a lot quicker in the water column. If not, it's going to go to the bottom pretty quick. And so I like to keep it up above the crappie to where the crappie can come out of them grass lines and attack the bait.
Sure. Sure.
And I would probably
So,
size down to some 4 pound tests too, especially when they get finicky. Because
sure.
when I'm sitting there looking at fish under a dock or in some structure, and I'm casting to them, and they're not getting any reaction, I'll size down to a 30-second to where I can get that slower fall to where it holds it in the strike zone longer. And you're not putting any action on it at all. You're basically just dead sticking it, just letting it do its thing instead of jerking it or pumping it. Because sometimes when you pull it away from them, they kind of flinch on it. They don't want to hit it.
so the Wally wiggle. All
Oh
right.
yeah, it's deadly.
Talk about the Wally wiggle.
So what I do is when I'm fishing deeper docks, especially, or I'm vertical fishing some standing timber, what I like to do is I'll pop that jig downward instead of pulling it up because you wouldn't imagine how far you can look on your live scope and see it or on your side imaging. But when you pull that up, when you jerk it up, it really moves a lot in the water column. And so what I do is I drop it down and just kind of pop it and then lift it. And I'm reeling at the same time, so I dip my rod instead of picking it up. I just dip it
Okay.
down. And
Okay.
yeah, that Wally wiggle's deadly under them docks, man. Because when you're pitching it in there and you reel it a little bit, then you pop it downward and it goes towards that fish. They just like to, when you those crappie like to hit the bait on the fall. And so if you're up above them and you dip it, it puts it right there in their face and they smack it.
Right.
It's called the Wally Wiggle, brother. I've done that. Hey, I think I did that on a video like 18 years ago, 20 years ago with Bass Pro Shops back in the day, and it just kind of stuck with me. That
The
technique.
Wally Wiggle and stilettos. It's a lot.
Better watch out.
That's a lot to take in.
Well, I'll
Well,
tell you, it's exciting. You know, Mr. Crappie came around in 1997, and you know we work every day and we stay after it 24/7, and supplying crappie fishermen with the best tackle and the most up-to-date techniques and products that they can use doing those techniques.
absolutely. Absolutely. Wally, talk about the knot that you use to tie your baits.
I use the loop knot on everything. I don't care what I'm tying on. And if I'm putting on multiple jigs, like a lot of times when I'm fishing bridge columns and stuff like that, where there's not a lot to hang up on, and maybe up there in some of your waters, I would like to tie two 32nd ounce jigs on there or two 16th ounce jigs on there to where when I'm tying the loop knot, I put everything on my line that I'm going to use first, and I tie the end jig on with a loop knot. Then I'll go up 15 inches from the bottom jig and tie on another loop knot, but you have to loop it through there 3 times tying that knot. And you can check out that knot on the internet or look it up or whatever to learn how to tie the loop knot. And it seems to be killer. And if you could leave your jig down there long enough with a fish on it, you could actually catch 2 at a time. Because a lot of times when you're fishing, I don't put 2 on there when I'm fishing docks, just bridges. But a lot of times when you catch one and you're reeling one in, there's about 4 or 5 others chasing that one crappie. But you don't see it with the naked eye, but you can see it on your depth finders. Because them fish chasing. Then the next cast, you don't have to cast as far and just pitch it right back on them fish, and maybe they're 10 foot from the boat instead of 20.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
early in the morning, fishing those bridges, like at Lake Fork in East Texas. Actually, at one time, I made part of my living guiding, which I was the first guide on Lake Fork when it comes to crappie. And I fished a lot of bridges back then because black crappie was all over that lake, especially on those bridge columns. And you could limit out in Texas, 10-inch limit and 25 a day per person. Take 2 people, we'd have 50 crappie by 9:30, and we'd go into the house. I mean, you start at daybreak, and those crappie are chasing those shad around those pilings that's up in there, getting that moss and stuff and that algae off that concrete, and or hitting that zooplankton, you know, the shad are. Then the crappie come up, but you don't have to pitch it out there very far, and those crappie would just be right underneath the surface. Sure. That's the one mistake I think that a lot of people make at crappie fishing is they're fishing below the fish because they're using too heavy a weight, they're using too heavy a jig, and they're down below them, not on them. And one thing I've learned with Mega Live from Humminbird is in the wintertime, say February, when the sun starts popping out, and of course we don't have ice overs down here in Texas, but we get really extreme cold water. And if it's real murky and stained from winter rains and stuff, those fish will be right under the surface over 20 foot of water. And you can just take that long jig pole and just stick that jig right out in front of them, and you'll be fishing a foot deep in 20 foot of water catching crappie.
Wow.
It's amazing. Wow. You just spot one out. You'll see him over there maybe 20 foot away, and then you just ease up on him because they're out there chasing those shad because the clarity is within the top 2 feet of the water column. That's where they can see, and that's where the bait fish are. And so they're running and catching them bait fish, and you slide that old jig in front of him, he's going to smack it.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
But
Wally,
that's
talk.
in water. That's in water that's pretty stained. Now I do
Sure.
know that up at Lake of the Ozarks and stuff in the wintertime, like in that February March area, they fish a lot of jerk baits for crappie out on those points, and it's clear water, so they're casting to them and actually look at using a suspended jerk bait catching crappie too.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a technique that's done in those clear water lakes.
Sure.
Because when the sun starts popping out, like I was saying, the top 3 or 4 foot of the water is the warmest, and those crappie will move up in those depths. And it might be over 25 foot of water, but they're going to come to the
Right.
surface where it's warmer.
Right. Absolutely. So, Wally, obviously, crappies are a fish that suspend more than a lot of fish. Um, with that being the case, mega live imaging in these various live scope, the forward facing sonar has to be an advantage to the crappie fisherman. Talk about that if you would.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's bringing a lot more younger anglers into the market because believe me, I've always said a third grader and a live scope unit could win the classic because younger kids can pick up on those games because they played them all their life. And what it is, it's actually a game. You're actually, running that live scope head and you're running it back and forth and you're looking for those big fish and stuff like that. Just like today, I was just going along, just minding my own business, and I looked down, just caught my eye, and there was a little old limb laying down there. It probably wasn't 6 foot long, but it had 3 big old crappie on it. And I just went ahead and passed it, turned around, pitched back in there, and caught all 3 of those crappie, and they were all pushing 2 pounds. I mean,
Wow.
it's just you've got the edge, in crappie tournaments. You can look at the weights on certain lakes, like just say the Midwest, okay? They're having crappie tournaments, around, and you just look at previous year's weights and start looking at the weights today in crappie tournaments, just like on Grenada Lake in Mississippi here a while back, the winning weight was 44 pounds, 21, no, 14 fish, 44 pounds.
Incredible.
Dude, I'm talking about that's an all-time record, but it's all done with Mega Live or Live Scope or whatever you want to call it, forward-facing sonar. And hey, I heard a lot of guys that say, I catch a lot of fish now. Why should I have one of those? Well, I guarantee it. What it does, if you're a guide, it cuts your time down on the water with your clients. So if they're allowed 15 fish a day, whatever, it don't take long to catch 15 fish. And another thing it does, not only cuts down the water, you can actually put in at the boat ramp and start fishing because
Sure.
you'll be seeing fish that you ain't never seen before.
Right.
You'll find yourself fishing in a lot of areas that you've never been to before.
Wow.
And
Interesting.
you definitely have the edge when it comes to tournament fishing. Excuse me.
Hmm. Awesome. Wally, we're just about out of time here, but we got time for a couple more questions. Are you still using that goofy line?
Oh yeah, I still use that Mr. Crappie high vis line. All the folks up there in the North Country always give me a hard time about high vis Mr. Crappie line. I just have to tell them it's the number one selling line in America in 6 and 4 pound test is Mr. Crappie high vis because
And
the fish do not care what's color your line is. Just like I tell everybody, my grandmother used 90-pound Dacron line catching crappie on Lake Washita in Arkansas, where you can see a dime at 10 feet. They don't care what color the line is. They're just interested on what's tied on the end. We're
yep,
talking about,
absolutely.
the lures. They're only interested in that lure.
Absolutely.
And I use that high vis line because I'm a line watcher. I can actually see, like when I'm pitching a dock or shooting a dock, I can see that line jump before I feel the strike on the end of my rod. It makes you pay attention a little bit more to detail, and especially in low light conditions, hey, you can still see that line because a lot of times it looks like a big rope going up underneath there.
Right. Well, and the other advantage too, and this isn't, you and I don't care because we're young guys yet, but for fishermen that are getting a little older, that high vis line, you can see that better too.
Oh yeah, it's the visibility of, and you don't get hung up as much because you can pay attention to, how deep your line is or how deep your lures are, and you can stay above that brush. Especially, of course, if you have forward-facing sonar, you can watch your lure right to the top of the brush. But having that advantage with that high vis line is it gives you more hookups 30 to 1. I mean, it's just I get 30% more hookups using that line. If I had to go fish clear line again, I'm up there in age a little bit. My eyes ain't what they used to be, but I can still thread that Mr. Crappie line through that hook without wearing glasses. That's for sure.
There you go. There you go. Last question, Wally, and then we'll let you go. What's going on with Crappie Expo?
Oh man, Crappie Expo is still rocking and reeling, man. This is our 4th year. I'm so excited about it. We're going back to Branson. Thank goodness we don't have COVID on us, and so we're going to get a lot of folks coming to the show. We've got some great entertainment. We got Jason D. Williams. We've got Mary Heather Hickman. We got the Buzz Andrews Band coming in from Dallas, Texas. We're going to have concerts every day. We got seminars going on every day. Hummingbird gives seminars on all their electronics and everything and what's new and what's blue and teach people how to use their electronics. That's a really good class at the Crappie Expo. We have the world's largest crappie fry, so on Saturday, everybody can come out and it's free, the crappie fry, and just have a big fish fry for everybody. And then again, we've got the largest and richest tournament, the Mr. Crappie $300,000 Invitational.
Wow.
And that's a lot of money jerking perch.
Darn
First
right
place is going to be $100,000, and 25th is $4,000. $100,000 will take you off hamburgers and put you on steaks, brother.
Darn right it would. Darn right it would.
And Crappie Expo is designed for our industry, and a lot of manufacturers come to the Crappie Expo. And what I'm seeing this year, a lot of the bass fishing companies are getting in. Daiwa's there, Akuma's there, Lew's is there. We've got Boyd Duckett, his company's going to be there this year. That's coming out with new crappie products because that's where the movement is. And even Favorite Fishing will be there with their new crappie stuff. And so you have a lot of bass companies. Matter of fact, last year at the Crappie Expo, at the Mr. Crappie Invitational, Shaw Grigsby, a bass fisherman, fished the tournament and almost made the top 25 by like 6/100ths. He missed it. And we had Paul Elias, and we had a couple of guys from Major League Fishing, from Favorite Fishing, fishing in the tournament. And those bass guys were actually impressed with how much knowledge you got to know if you're going to come in there and slip $100,000 out from under somebody.
Sure, absolutely. Wally, what are the dates of the next one?
The Crappie Expo is going to be in Branson, Missouri at the Branson Convention Center. It's October the 20th through the 22nd. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And so the tournament actually starts a day earlier. It's going to be on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we're going to crown the champion on the main stage on Friday. So all of the fishermen can enjoy the Crappie Expo on Saturday. And Sunday's going to be moving day, coming back to Texas. But I really enjoy the Crappie Expo every year. You meet a lot of folks. It's a family deal. Bring the kids. We're going to have stuff for the kids to do this year. It's going to be a lot of fun and win a lot of stuff. And also, we give away $10,000 a day in cash. One lucky person's going to win 10 grand. Last year in Shreveport, we had 2 lucky people that, we do it on Friday and Saturday. And, but I'm telling you, cash is king. You know what I mean?
There you go. You bet it is.
Man.
Wally, is there a website where people can learn more about it?
CrappieExpo.com. And also, if they want to get in touch with me, my number and everything is on CrappieExpo.com. Just go on there and scroll down to where you see the convention center, and you can read all about it, learn all about it. And if you're a manufacturer out there that is looking to grow your business in the fishing world, you can also go on there and read our welcome letter, and you can actually register right there online for the Crappie Expo and pick out the size of your booth, pick out the size of your sponsorship, and you can actually make your hotel reservations right there on crappieexpo.com.
Cool. Wally, as always, we appreciate your time, and you and I talked recently. It sounds like we're going to get you up here in Minnesota, and we're going to film another TV show and talk about and show on television some of that new Mr. Crappie stuff. So a lot of exciting stuff.
If the wind ain't blowing 50 miles an hour like it did for 2 days last time I came up there, and we had a window of about 4 hours, and I think we caught about 70 crappie in about a 4-hour window between the wind and the storms and the rain. And, we just sat there on the boat ramp until that squall went by, and after that squall come by, me and you went out there and put the smack down on them, buddy. I had a great time. It was an awesome event, and y'all made a great TV show there. I know you couldn't do much with me there in the boat, but hey, I'd like to get in that boat again and whoop up on them crappie in Minnesota.
All right, we'll do it, man. We'll talk soon. Wally, thanks for your time, man.
Hey, y'all stay tuned for all the good Mr. Crappie products that's coming out in the Wally Marshall Signature Series. Thank y'all very much for having me on your podcast, and I look forward to coming up there and fishing with you guys at Fishing the Midwest.
Good. All right, thanks, Wally. We'll catch up soon.
All right, see y'all later, guys. Take care.
So there you have it, folks. That was Mr. Crappie, Wally Marshall. He got some great new products coming out. Crappie Expo, a lot going on in Mr. Crappie's world. Outstanding fisherman and one of the true gentlemen in the business. So we thank him for his time. So our next guest, we're going to welcome in Pete Przepiora from Omnia Fishing. Pete, did I get that right?
You did. You nailed it, actually. Perfect.
All right, man. Good to see you, Pete. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you. It's good to see you.
You too, man. So tell me about, you guys are in the Twin Cities Metro, the Minneapolis Metro. You've been fishing, I'm sure. What's going on down that way?
I've been out quite a bit lately. I didn't get out a ton early this spring. Work just kept me off the boat. But lately I have been out a bunch, and I avoided fishing my home lake of Minnetonka a lot because I'm not fishing a lot of the tournaments my friends are fishing, and I didn't want to be that jerk that was picking off fish that my friends were catching. And now I feel bad about it because none of them caught them that good this spring, which I love rubbing that in. But I should have gone out there. I haven't done any bed fishing or anything like that, and honestly, I'm not like super opinionated about that or anything. I just don't find bed fishing fun unless it's in a competitive format, so I don't do a lot of that. So I've really been trying to key in on pre-spawn or post-spawn bites, and I've struggled quite a bit, to be honest. I've caught a lot of numbers, but I haven't caught a lot of size so far this spring. So some of my friends are feeling bad for me, and one of my friends is in town for a little bit. We took a venture down to Okoboji down in Iowa. Thought we could go pick on some of those big dumb bass down there, and once again I came home without a 4-pounder. So I'm on a hot streak of not catching giants, but I get a lot of numbers. So those the post spawn fish are definitely moved out to those weed lines and the good vegetation that we have growing in our lakes. So if you want to throw horizontal moving baits like thunder cricket from striking swim jigs and ripping traps or doing whatever you like to do, fishing offshore vegetation, there are some post spawners already out there. If you're not into driving around and looking at the bottom of the lake all day with your sunglasses on trying to find beds, there's some out there. Pre-spawners, I've had really little luck. So as much as it seemed like our spring was super long, I think it's a lot easier to go find some post-spawn fish. They're already up under the docks. If you want to use a stick bait like an Ocho or a Senko or a General, whatever stick bait is your favorite, the post spawners are already catchable. And if you catch big ones, please let me know how you did that, because this guy can't figure it out.
All right. All right. Well, we did, Pete. We were over on Big Stone here about 10 days ago, and we filmed over there, and we did get into some of those 4 to 6 pounders. The only problem with that is spoiled.
Yeah.
The rest of the year is going to be, going to be a little harder.
Yeah,
Is.
that's become one of my favorite fisheries in our region is that Big Stone Lake. That I had the best fall I've had for size and average out there. What a great fishery! I hope we all take care of it. I hope all these tournaments that are finding their way out there, people respect how great that place is. Because man, it is special. It's fun, and I definitely made a mistake driving south instead of west and not going out to where you were.
Sure. Well, Pete, let's talk Omnia Fishing. You guys are one of the fastest growing online retailers now in the fishing world, and give us a little bit about your history and where you guys are headed.
Well, thanks for saying. We've been on a good run, and I don't want to discount the fact that we rolled the dice and started this venture up, pre all the madness of the pandemic and everything that happened. And once it hit, it kind of accelerated things to a rate that we couldn't imagine. And we grew really, really fast. And we started doing business all over the whole country at a fast pace. The concept of the business, the original founders, Matt Johnson and Dan Wick and Chris Morgul, two of them came from the industry. One was from the tech world. They concepted the business around helping people shop by lake, so they could figure out what they needed to buy by lake, buy they were efficient. The way that we used to be able to walk into a traditional retail brick and mortar and get that kind of information for the body of water we wanted to fish. And we were able to prove that out really fast, and it's accelerated us a lot. So in the last few weeks, we've rolled out a native mobile app for Apple and Android platforms. We've hired a ton of tech in the last. I feel bad because I probably have the count wrong, but I think we've hired at least 10 people in from the tech space in the world, from native mobile, tech engineers, all sorts of different people from all over the tech industry to help us accelerate our technology side of our business. We focused primarily on bass initially, and that was strategic because bass is such a big market and it's so widespread around our whole country that it was easier for us to kind of prove out the concept and still be able to transact with customers and show that we could be a profitable, fast shipping, highly competitive business early. And now my job is starting to shift slowly into, okay, now how do we service the rest of the anglers out there, like the underserviced anglers from the other species in the e-commerce world, like crappies, like walleyes, like the inshore anglers, like all those anglers. So my team is kind of set up on the merchandising side, really good on bass, and the guys I got there are smarter than me, that work for me, the buyers and stuff. They're going to be able to kind of maintain that bass business and keep that growing and keep expanding in that. But me and another guy that I work with, Joe Panessa, are going to start really focusing in on that crappie world and the inshore world and some other species shortly here. So I would say by fourth quarter this year to first quarter next year, we'll be playing significantly in those markets. And by then, we'll also be moved into a much larger facility because that's honestly, Mike, been our biggest constraint to date is the fact that we're currently in a small space for how much business we're doing. So we really get crunched when we get enough inventory in. We can barely get it put away because of space. So we're moving into a larger facility third quarter, and we look forward to all the adventures of expanding into multi-species.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I keep hearing, Pete, two things about Omnia. My product gets there immediately or
Yeah.
very quickly, and customer service. You guys take care of your customers, and that's awesome. That's great.
Thanks
So,
for
Pete,
pointing that out. That's what we've hung our hat on so far, and it's worked really well.
you bet. Yeah. And I hear that time and time again. So, Pete, let's talk a little bit about. I know that you guys have a good selection on the bass side of the Lew's rods and reels products. Let's start with the Signature Series rods. How are you guys doing there on inventory there?
That we got all of them. We have like all the models, which was a struggle at first. We were really kind of we'd get a few popular models in, they go right out the door, and then we'd sit empty on, let's say, a Zona tube cracking rod would be out of stock for a while, or a Andy Montgomery jig skipping rod. And as you know, if you've come to know with that line of rods, they're technique specific model rods developed by each of the pros from Striking. So if you're a Carolina rig angler, an offshore angler, Mark Rose has stuff for you, and Greg Hackney has a frog rod. Like, who doesn't want a Greg Hackney frog rod? There's a bunch of cool rods in that series, so it was kind of spotty for a while for us, and kind of similar to what me and you have talked about offline off this podcast. I always looked like I was really smart at my and good at my job for the last couple of years because whatever we got in, we sold, and I was like, yeah, I buy everything everybody wants, and you know, uh, now that we're kind of leveling off is in the world of shopping, and we're starting to think because we're all putting $5 gallon gas in our boats and stuff. We got to get smarter, and now that we've been able to get all the rods in, it's fun to see which ones are most popular in what regions, and you can see like those ledge portions of the country, those TVA lakes, those ledge river, or the Tennessee River Valley lakes, like the Kentucky lakes, Pickwick, Gunnersville, all those lakes. You see the Mark Rose offshore kind of rods selling really well. You see the Hackney frog rod sells everywhere. Uh, Zona's tube rod and his spinning rods are selling great up in the Great Lakes region of the country, our neck of the woods, the Midwest. So yeah, those are ones I definitely recommend if you're a fan of any of those anglers and you want to try some of the rods those guys designed. Those Striking or the Lew's Signature Series rods are pretty cool. They're really cool rods.
Yeah, they are, and it's great. You guys you have all the models, so that's the
Yep.
place to go if someone. So Pete, let's talk a little bit. You mentioned the Andy Montgomery skipping and pitching rod. He's
Yep.
got a reel that matches that rod pretty well. Talk about that if you would.
That was probably, Mike, honestly, my biggest black eye of last year was I didn't get in front of that one at all. Uh, I saw it. We ordered it. We ordered it pretty small. We thought, let's see how this thing does. We sold it out right away, but we were selling so much of everything else. I really had no idea the demand for that reel. Uh, Honestly, I caught it more doing my own social media search and seeing people talking about it and other retailers complaining how we got them back in stock, and I'm like, really, they're moving them there? And we got a pretty decent batch in towards the end of last year, burned through a smaller order we had put in this spring, and I pulled a favor from a new guy that works over there rather. That's an old friend of mine in the industry, and he got me a pretty significant amount. And those things have been flying. So to be honest with you, Mike, I'm not. I just have to be honest with your listeners here. I have traditionally fished a lot of Daiwa stuff and a lot of Shimano stuff. Uh, I've fished some Fluger stuff, I hadn't fished a lot of Lew's stuff other than throwing it around from my Cabela's days when they'd come in. We put line on stuff and fish with it.
Hmm.
My first purchases of some Lew's products since I started here at Omnia, and I have this mission statement. All the young guys that work there laugh at me. I buy stuff from everybody now, and I try everything. I bought one skip and pitch reel. Actually, I didn't buy it. I got it from our salesman as a sample to try. Uh, I liked it. I bought three more, and I'm on currently going to get my fourth here shortly. Uh, that to me is the most sleeper flipping reel I've ever fished with in my entire life. It's tiny. It's super small and compact. The spool is super shallow, but as you know, the flipping technique, I need
Yeah.
30 yards of line max, but it holds more than that. But it's
Hmm.
very shallow spool, but effortlessly I can flip all day long with big weight, lightweight. I was with my buddy down on Okoboji last Thursday that I talked about. I was flipping the shade lines of docks, which is way back far. It was a far pitch. Um, I was a 5/16 ounce weight with a 3-inch plastic and a 3/0 hook. I was underhanding it and able to kind of land it really softly on a really long pitch with that reel. Um, it's one of those reels that I think it's going to be the more anybody who tries one's going to buy another one and another one, and it's going to build a fanfare. And I can see now why everybody burned through them, and I missed the boat on that early, but we're not going to miss it again. We got a lot now, and it's a favorite amongst us at Omnia now.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. One of the things I like is it's so small. I mean,
Yeah,
it just it sits right the where it's supposed to. It's awesome in the hand. So let's Pete, let's talk. You talked about the zoner rods, the spinning rods.
yeah.
What reel are you liking for those?
You know, it funny you mentioned that because I'm pretty open about my opinions on a lot of the rods and reels out there in the market on some of the Omnia content we do. It's always been a challenge outside of the two big Japanese manufacturers, Daiwa and Shimano, to find spinning reels that are of value that are going to hold up, be really good. And Pfluger's done a good job with that. And but all the Thunder tends to always land on those two. Uh, it another one that snuck by me till it landed, and it looks cool with the rod is that Hyper Mag spinning reel from Lew's. It's got a wind grip knob on it, and I'm a big proponent of round knobs. Um, and I know that sounds weird, but most reel manufacturers don't make round knobs. They make
Right?
flat knobs or some style. So I'm a nerd and I buy them secondhand market. I buy them aftermarket knobs and I put them on all my reels. Uh,
Wow.
Lew's makes round knobs on the wind grip style knobs, and so that's what actually attracted me to the reel because it had a round knob, and I was like, "Oh, this is really nice." Uh, but the reel is magnesium, which I want to point this out to you. Go do your homework on a magnesium spinning reel and see what they cost from any other manufacturer. You're in the two and a half, 300, 400, 5, 6, up to $1,000 now dollar range for a magnesium frame spinning reel. That Hypermax magnesium frame, it's like $170 reel. It's super light and it's got a knob I really like. I'm just biased to that style of knob, but that reel is. There's a reason why we've turned them so fast. Once again, a little miss on mine. We ordered them light, like 10s and 12s of all the sizes at first. Now, thankfully, I was corrected by our crack sales team over there from the Rather team, and I got a lot of them. So
Right.
if you're looking at trying something outside of the norm, when you look at higher end, really high performance spinning reels, I advise you try that Hyper Mag. You're going to be impressed, I promise.
Right, right. And for me, I'm this multi-species kind of guy where
Yep.
early in the spring right now, I'm spending a lot of time throwing a jig and a minnow or a jig and a plastic around for walleyes. I'm loving that reel for my walleye fishing too. So it's like you said, it's lightweight and super smooth. A really nice
It
reel.
is, and I'm jealous. I'm trying to get more back into the multi-species state of mind and get good at it. And I realized real fast this spring how much harder walleye fishing is than I remembered it. Uh, 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 I've been on the struggle bus this spring, so I might be calling you for some tips when we get off this call.
There you go. There you go. So, Pete, last thing I'd like to talk about is there's also a hyper mag in the bait casting
Yeah.
side of that as well, and you guys have those too, correct?
That one I didn't miss. I knew that was the most popular one. That one's not a black eye. I ordered a lot of those. We've sold a lot of them. That's the hottest reel Luz makes, and it's spendy. There's no hiding. You're a hardcore angler if you're buying 250 $350 bait casters and stuff. That Hyper Mag's a spendy reel for a reason. If you've seen the success Jason Christie's had this year winning the Classic and all that, if you look at all his reels, he has different color knobs, which throws you off on a lot of his rods. Um, but they're all Hyper Mags. That reel has a brake, um, two different styles of braking systems, a centrifugal and a magnetic brake, and it's light. Uh, it's it's a very very much so a player with all the high end reels on the market. Once again, shaving off $100 from the competitors for the features you get. So I know now why those have sold so well. I haven't bought one myself, so I don't have personal experience to talk about with it. But I'll guarantee you, if you have me on again, if you're nice enough to invite me again, I will have a report on my own feelings on that reel shortly here.
Awesome, awesome. And Pete, it not just Lou's product. When it comes to rods and reels, you guys have all your bases covered, correct?
We went pretty nuts. I say this. I've said this a few times, and I I put an asterisk on it because I don't know for sure. This is a guess, just doing my own homework, looking out there. I believe right now that we have the second biggest assortment in bass fishing in the marketplace right now, as far as SKU count. Um, so if there's something you're after, I please take a look at us and see what we got. I think you'd be surprised if you dive in to see how deep we've gone. And we've gone really wide and really deep in colors and sizes and assortment, from manufacturers from the West Coast to the Northeast to the Southeast, all over the place. Um, and it's growing, and it's growing fast. We have a lot more coming. So uh, our assortment's a point of pride. What I would say to your listeners that follow you, Mike, because you're one of the better known multi-species anglers up here in the Midwest, uh, look for us to do the same when it comes to the other stuff too.
Cool. That's awesome. I'll look forward to that, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Pete, as always, thanks for your expertise. Thanks for your time, and we'll catch up with you again later on in the summer.
Thanks, buddy, and thanks for always inviting me. It's cool to talk to you and catch up,
Yep.
and thanks for all the support you guys have shown towards Omnia in our early stages. I won't forget it. Thanks, bud.
Awesome. One last thing before you go, Pete. Give us your web address.
It is omniafishing.com. So just go to omniafishing.com and go check us out. And I promise you, and also if you're a phone guy, go check us out on Apple and Android, both platforms in the stores. We have our native app now. It's in phase 1, and phase 2 is coming out about in a week here. And you're gonna see some cool stuff. We're gonna do some stuff no one's ever done before. You'll see.
Awesome. Again, folks, that was Pete Przepiora from Omnia Fishing. Omnia Fishing is lighting the world on fire when it comes to e-commerce retail in the fishing tackle market. You definitely want to give those guys um, a check next time you're in the market for whatever it is, particularly in the bass fishing world. And as Pete said, they're coming into crappies, walleyes, and some of the inshore stuff as well. So our next guest, we want to welcome in Tom Ferdinandt. Tom is the lead salesman at Hannay's Marine. Tom, welcome to Taiwan On.
Thanks, Mike. How's it going tonight?
Very good, very good. How about for you?
Real good. Real good.
Good,
Beautiful night out.
good, good. Awesome. So, Tom, it has been a whirlwind in the marine industry the last couple years, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Talk from a salesman's perspective a little bit about G3 boat sales and inventory availability and that kind of stuff. And then after that, we're going to get into tonight's topic, which centers on tips for buying a used boat. But talk about G3 and sales and where things are at right now.
Things have been going bonkers. I guess we've sold out of most of our 2022 products. We do still have, a little bit of a selection left coming in. If it's not there, we have, I think, 3 new G3s on the floor right now that are for sale. Sorry, 4 that are for sale, and then we might have another handful or so that are coming in here, before the middle of July that are still available. And then we're moving into the 2023 model year, which we're excited for. We got some new colors coming out, and otherwise the product line, stayed similar. But for 2022, we did roll out about 7 new products in the DV lineup. So we're looking forward to 2023. Hopefully this fall have a full showroom for people to see and then order for the springtime.
Awesome. All right. Good. So, Tom, let's shift gears and let's talk about if I'm a consumer and I'm in the market for a used boat. Now, I know that, product new used has been in high demand, either one. So we know that's going on. But if I'm a first time boat buyer and I'm looking for a used fishing boat, what are some of the do's and some of the don'ts that you would recommend from a sales perspective?
The used boat market has been strong and will continue to be strong for a while until we can start getting new product on the showroom. But what I'm seeing in the used boat market is there's a lot of people, I call it fishing. So there's a lot of customers that are trying to sell their boats, but not necessarily wanting to sell their boats or having to sell their boats. So they put it online and ask inflated price for it. And if they get it and sell it. But if they don't get it, then they just don't sell it, which I believe is driving the price of the used market up. I have customers that I see boats online and I call them and I'm just like, why are you selling your boat? And they'll say, well, Tom, I'm not selling my boat, but if I can get this price for it, I'll sell it. And that is that's giving like a false sense of market value, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what I would advise that used customer to do is call somebody. If you're looking at a Lund, call a Lund dealer. If you're looking at a G3, call a G3 dealer. Call an Alumacraft dealer if you're looking at a Alumacraft, or call us at Hannay's if you're looking at anything, in that fishbowl market, and we'll tell you if it's a fair market, value for what you're buying. Another thing we do at Hannay's is what we have a used boat evaluation. So if you go and you call, um, you know, John Smith and you're trying to buy his boat and you don't know John Smith from John Doe and you want a tech to look at it and tell you if it's a good deal or tell you, I mean, not necessarily a good deal, but a good solid boat engine, boat motor trailer package, we can do that for you at Hannay's. So, and then that way you at least have peace of mind that knowing you're not wasting your money.
Mm-hmm. So, Tom, can you let's talk outboard engines, I guess, to start with. When you guys are doing that evaluation, or anytime that a boat comes in, a used boat, are you guys able to evaluate hours on the engine in most cases, or just on the newer product, or walk through that a little?
On the newer product, yeah, on the newer product, we can tell hours, on anything, 2002, 3-ish and newer,
Mm,
depending on the outboard. But hours in Minnesota are usually not a big player because of the fact we're in Minnesota, and it takes a fisherman like you to put hours on an engine.
mhm.
Unlike your average fisherman, your weekend angler, he's never going to wear an engine out in Minnesota. So for us seeing an engine with 500 hours on it might seem a lot like here in Minnesota, but you drop that down in Florida or Texas, and 500 hours is 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So
And
hours on outboards in Minnesota are kind of a oversight, in my opinion.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, I mean, it takes someone who's on the water every day to put a lot of hours on. I know, some guys that'll put 300 hours on in a year, but even at 300 hours in a year, it's going to take you a long time to wear out an outboard engine, correct?
No, cool, yeah, long, especially the new ones. It'll take a long time
Right. Okay.
for sure.
How about the trailer, Tom? What kind of things do you look for on a boat trailer?
On a boat trailer, you just want to look if the customer's taking care of it. Eh, boat trailers in Minnesota are going to get rusty. I mean, that's just kind of where we're at. So you want to make sure that the tires are good, that the trailer got used more than anything else. If the trailer just sits, and gets tire rot and everything else, but lights work, surge brakes work. If you got surge brakes, tires are good. But that's kind of what you want to look for on a trailer. So, and most trailers up here in Minnesota, like I said, kind of similar with the boat. We're not using them year round, so we're not really wearing them out too quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about, Tom, as far as the boat is concerned, live well pumps, bilge pumps, all that kind of stuff? Is it unrealistic to expect that on a used boat everything's going to work? Or, what thoughts there?
It all depends on if you buy it from Hannay's. If you buy a used boat, you're gonna buy everything's gonna work. When it leaves the shop. If it doesn't work, we'll let you know. We don't necessarily fix a radio, or if it doesn't work, we'll just tell the customer it doesn't work. But live well pumps, bilge pumps, stuff like that will work. When you're buying a used one, that's simple enough for the customer to check. You can turn a switch on and hear the pump run, and it's gonna run. But you're looking at little dollars there. You can't let a non-bilge pump, or a non-live well, not live well pump not working, keep you back from buying the boat that you want, because that's a $80 fix at the shop, or an $80 part to fix it. So, I mean, little stuff like that. Most of the people that are selling their used boats and actually selling them because they want to get either out of boating, or they're upgrading, most of that stuff's going to work because they are using the product.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, Last question on used boats, Tom. What about in terms of seating, upholstery, that kind of stuff? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, seating upholstery, that's just all up to some guys are meticulous, their stuff's got to look perfect. And some guys, a little rip in the seat's not going to bother them. I guess, when you're talking about the overall boat, what the major things you have to look at is floors and transoms.
Mm-hmm.
Your floor has to be solid, right? And your transom has to be solid. If your floor isn't solid or your transom isn't solid, those are your big dollar mistakes. Your transom's going to run you, $4,000 to $7,000 to replace, and a floor can run you, $2,000 to $4,000 to get replaced, depending. So those things, consumers can, do a transom check on it, and do a floor check on it, make sure the floor is solid, make sure the transom's solid. And if those two things are solid in the boat, and you like the boat and the motor, and everything checks out there, the little stuff, cosmetic stuff is all, up to the eye of the beholder.
Sure. So, Tom, what do you guys have currently? Do you have some used product like we talked about earlier? I know that the boating market as a whole, it's a short supply kind of situation still. Where are you guys sitting on used stuff?
Right now, I have a 2018 G3 1810 Sportsman with the 115 Yamaha on the back of it. It's not online yet because I'm still waiting on titles to clear, but that one is available inside to look at. I have a 2000 Lund with a 90 Honda on it, Pro V, or Mr. Pike, I'm sorry. And then I have one that's going to be put online tomorrow, Runabout Larson, 1999 Runabout Larson with the 115 Johnson on the back that'll come tomorrow. But with this weather turning the way it is, we had more used product last week, but the hot weather turns the used boat market on.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, Tom, that's awesome stuff. Tell us Hannay's hours right now, if you will, that you guys are open, and then give us your phone number and your website address, if you would.
Our hours right now, Mike, are Monday and Thursday 9 to 7, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday 9 to 6, and then through August 1st, 9 to 1 on Saturday. And then we have a 10 sale coming up. The parts guys put on a 10 sale here June 23rd through the 25th. And they'll just be regular business hours. And Hannay's 10 sale always has a good turnout. Hopefully we can get some good product out there for you.
Phone number, website.
Phone number 612-781-7411. My cell phone is 507 382-1828. Text or call that number anytime. And then our website is hannaysmarine.com.
All right, perfect. Tom, we appreciate your time tonight and your expertise. That's some great insight for a used boat buyer. We'll catch up with you again later this summer.
All right, Mike,
You
have a
too.
good night.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. That was Tom Ferdinandt, the lead salesman at Hannay's Marine in Minneapolis. And that will bring us about to the end of episode number 3 of the Taiwan On podcast series. We want to thank Mr. Crappie Wally Marshall. Always a great time and very informative. Pete from Omnia Fishing, and also Tom, who we just concluded with here from Hannay's Marine. We want to thank all 3 of those guys for their time. And we'll be back again next week. And again, like I've talked about the last couple of weeks, our schedule is a little bit fluid right now because it's tournament season. So our fishing pros are on the road doing a lot of traveling. I guarantee you we will have a leading pro as a guest next week. Just don't know who it is, but we'll get that up on Facebook as soon as we know. So from all of us at Fishing the Midwest, thanks for stopping by. Check us out on Facebook or our website, fishingthemidwest.com. We'll see you again next week. And as always, remember to include a youngster in your next outdoors adventure.